Okay, so in the previous class, we have been discussing about the lymphatic system, and in the previous class, we discussed what is the difference between the lymphatic capillaries and the blood capillaries. Okay, and then we discussed the two major ducts, the right lymphatic duct and the thoracic duct, right? How these two ducts enter into the, I think we had a diagram, how these two ducts enter into the veins and pour the blood into the vein. I think yeah, this one. Okay, the two ducts, the right lymphatic duct and the thoracic duct, how they enter into the vein and pour all that lymph which has been collected from the entire body and pour that into the blood, which becomes then part of the venous blood, which is then sent to the right atrium through superior vena cava. Okay, so now today we'll discuss about the lymphatic collecting vessels. Okay, so all these are called as, collecting vessels. Look, see, if you see the order, you just need to remember the order here. Okay, the way we have veins, venules, arterioles, arteries, right? Similarly, for the lymphatic vessels, we have, for example, we started with the lymphatic capillaries. Okay, just remember the order. These lymphatic capillaries unite to form the bigger collecting vessels, bigger lymphatic vessels. We call them as the collecting vessels. Okay, so these collecting vessels, when they unite, they all join together and form the lymphatic trunk. Okay, and this lymphatic trunk, when they join together, they form the lymphatic duct. Okay, so duct is like the largest of all, and capillaries are smallest of all, lymphatic capillaries. And if I give you an example of right lymphatic duct and the thoracic duct, which finally brings blood back to the, and not blood, I mean, sorry, which finally pours the lymph into the blood. Okay, so other than that, what you need to know about the lymphatic vessels is how they are different or similar to the veins or blood vessels. Okay, so remember that lymphatic vessels are similar to the veins in structure. They're also thin walled like the veins. Okay, but as a thin walled like the veins, and there's also no pulse. Okay, you know that they have no pulse. We discussed about that because it's a pumpless system. So no pulse in the lymphatic vessels. Point number two, low pressure. They also have low pressure like that of the veins. So low pressure, no pulse, right? And then uh, they have valves. We also spoke about the lymphatic vessels, the lymphatic capillaries also have valves. We spoke about that. So the way veins have valves, so the lymphatic vessels also have valves. Okay, and we also spoke about their pumpless system. They're at low pressure. Okay, so we said that lymphatic vessels are similar to the veins, but they have low pressure, pumpless system, right? And they are also permeable than the veins, right? And they also have valves like the veins. Okay, and they're thin walled like the veins. Okay, and then the same thing again, if you remember, we spoke about how valves, they help in pumping the blood back to the heart, the venous return, right? Same thing here. We spoke about the milking action of the skeletal muscles. If you remember, we spoke about that, the muscular pumps and the respiratory pumps. So same thing here again, right? As the muscles contract, right, they milk the lymph through these lymphatic vessels, and then it is brought back to the bigger ducts, thoracic duct or the right lymphatic duct. Okay, and also the respiratory pumps. We spoke about how pressure changes in thoracic and the abdomen, right, during breathing. Okay, it basically pumps the blood in the veins. So same thing again here. Okay, and then we also spoke about how contraction of the smooth muscles, okay, in the veins, vasoconstriction and vasodilation is important in the veins, right? So even the even these lymphatic vessels are provided with the smooth muscles, so they also show vasoconstriction and vasodilation, especially vasoconstriction, right? That also helps in transportation of the lymph, right? That is all. And then we move on to the specialized organs of the lymphatic system. We call them lymph nodes. These are the lymph nodes. Look at this. These are the lymph nodes. Look at this. Okay. And if you see here in the body, look at this. Where is the diagram? Look at this. Everywhere we have lymph nodes in the body. Look at this. Okay. Look at this. And the concentration of lymph nodes is higher in the cervical area, in the axillary area, and in this area, the perineal area, right? So these areas you will have a lot of lymph nodes as compared with the rest of the body. Okay. Now let's try to understand the function of the lymph nodes and their structure, okay, and what they are rich in. Okay. So lymphatic nodes, as I told you, lymphatic nodes are the only organs, okay, only organ which can filter the lymph before it is returned to the body, right? So filtration means what? So whatever cancer cells, whatever microorganisms, viruses which have managed to enter the lymph from the interstitial fluid or from the interstitial spaces, right? And that lymph is first filtered by these lymphatic organs called as lymph nodes, okay, and then that lymph is sent to the blood. So we can say that it acts as a filtering organ, okay. And I told you that they're densely, located in the inguinal, axillary, and the cervical regions. I already showed you that, right? So all these things are filtered whenever lymph enters into the lymphatic organ called as a lymph node. Okay, so what are lymph nodes rich in? Okay, when you cut a lymph node, you see that they are so rich in macrophages, right? And they engulf and destroy the bacteria or viruses or foreign bodies. And they're also rich in T cells and B cells like your lymphocytes. So you can find T cells, you can find B cells, you can find macrophages in the lymph nodes. Okay, let's try to see a transverse section of a lymph node. Okay, if you look at this lymph node, okay, what does it resemble? Doesn't it resemble like a kidney? Yes or no? Look at it. Isn't it kidney shaped? Yes. Okay. And what do we see here? If you if you see the transverse section of the lymph, what do you see here? Like the kidney, we see an outer area here, this area, which is called as a cortical area. Okay. And then the inner area is a medullary area. This is a medullary area present in the lymph. Okay. Lymph node, I mean. Okay, and then when you see this lymph node, okay, this lymph node has a lot of trabecula in it. What is a trabecule? If you remember, we discussed trabecule in the spongy bone, right? Those bars of bones in the spongy bone, right? So inside you will see there's a kind of a trabecula, which is, but here it's made up of connective tissue, not the bone. So if you see here, do we have to, let me erase this so that you can, do you see here these yellow things? So these are all trabecula here. No, these trabecula are important, right? They are connective tissue strands. They divide the lymph nodes into various compartments. Look at this, look at this, look at this, right? So lymph nodes are divided into various compartments by the trabecula, right? And we also have the reticular connective tissue. You will see that most of the lymph nodes are made, most of the lymphatic organs have reticular connective tissue except thymus. Okay, if you remember reticular connective tissue, the thin form of the chapter number 3. What are reticular fibers? Thin form of collagen fibers. Remember chapter number 3? Yes. So internally, you will see that there are a lot of, these reticular connective tissue fibers present inside it. Okay. And now what else do we have? Okay, and if you see here, it's covered by a thick capsule over here. Okay, and then the outer cortex part, the outer cortex part is this part. Okay, erase this. Okay, so this part is an outer cortex part. Okay, and it contains follicles. What are follicles? Do you see these purple colored things? Okay, these follicles, right? So these follicles are basically collection of the lymphocytes. So all the T cells or the B cells, okay, which are formed in the bone marrow, okay, from the bone marrow, okay, which is a primary lymphoid organ, we'll talk about that. From the bone marrow, the T cells and B cells, they migrate to the lymph nodes and are present in the cortical areas. Okay. And then within this, the purple area in the center, if you see here, the yellow colored area is there. Okay, we call it a germinal center. What is a germinal center? Germinal center is, it is, it is kind of, it has a lot of antibodies, okay, which are released by the plasma cells. Okay, it's rich in lot of antibody which are ready to fight with the bacteria or the viruses or the antigens. Okay, so then we have the medullary cords present over here. Okay, so if you see here, they're cord, like these cords, which is, which also has these purple colored spots in it. These cords, if you pay attention, right, these medullary cords also contain T cells and B cells. So wherever you see these purple spots, okay, they're all rich in T cells and the B cells. That tells us that some amount of T cells and B cells are also present in the cortical area, not only also in the medullary area. So not only in the cortical area, but of course the concentration is more in the cortical area than in the medullary area, because in the medullary area you will mostly find the macrophages. So here you will find lot of macrophages. So in short, your lymph node is rich in T cell, B cell, and the macrophages. Okay. And then if you pay attention to these lymph nodes, I'll show you in the diagram over here. Okay, there's something called as the efferent vessels and the efferent vessels. Okay, if you pay attention over here, okay, this is a lymph node. Look at this. Pay attention to this lymph node. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 afferent vessels. Afferent means, going, and efferent means coming out. The same way we discussed in the nervous system, afferent nervous system and efferent nerve fibers, right? So you will see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 afferent vessels are there, but only one efferent vessel is there. My question to you all is, why do you think that we have more afferent and very few efferent? How is it going to help a lymph node? And what do you think? I will show you in this diagram as well. If you pay attention, it has 1, 2, 3, 4 efferent vessels, but just 1 and 2 vessels coming out. What do you think? Do you think it has any significance? Yes, Raneem? Shata? One way, no, it's going to help with the, okay, yes, Rava, absolutely, very good. What happens because of, absolutely right. It's something like, it's something like you're in a room, okay? You're allowed to enter into the classroom. The classroom has 10 doors, okay? The classroom has 10 doors, okay, as you enter. But when you have to, and the same classroom has an exit, has a carouge from the other side, okay? It has only 2 doors to come out. What's going to happen? As you all enter together, it might take less time for all of you to enter into the classroom. But when you need to exit out, okay, when you need to go out, so you all might stand there for some time and wait for your turn to go out, right? So same thing with the lymph. As lymph enters into the lymph node, we have plenty of afferent vessels so that lymph can, enter into the lymph node, but we just have 2 exits so that it gives the lymph an extra time to stay in the lymph node. As the lymph stays within the lymph node for a longer time, the macrophages over here, the T cells over here, the B cells over here, they will completely monitor the lymph and kill the microorganisms present in the lymph. Okay, so just to make sure that the fluid stops here for some time, which gives extra time to the lymphocytes and the macrophages, that is why we just have many entry points but only 2 exit points in the lymph nodes. Okay, so what happens to the foreign substances in the lymph when they enter the lymph node? Simply, they might be either phagocytized by the lymphocytes or macrophages, by the macrophages, or they might be attacked by the T cells or the B cells, okay, to mount the immune response. Okay. So this was about the flow of lymph through the lymph nodes. Okay, I think I told you last time that whenever sometimes a person who has a cancer, you might have heard about that. If a person has cancer, right? So sometimes the doctors, they need to remove some of the lymph nodes. Okay, so what do they do is, right, before they remove those cancerous, those lymph nodes. Okay, what happens is that they try to inject a radioactive dye, okay, into the tumor site. Okay, and what happens, and then then they try to find out, okay, which lymph node is infected. Okay, as they see, for example, this lymph node is infected, 3 4 lymph nodes in the axillary area are infected. Okay, those lymph nodes are removed. But is it okay to remove the lymph nodes? It's perfectly okay, no problem. We have still plenty of lymph nodes present in our body. But yes, it definitely causes, a little discomfort in patient, okay? Because definitely when you remove the lymph node, there's a lot of lymphedema, right? So basically, that lymphatic system takes the fluid back to the blood, right? So there might be some fluid accumulation, okay, uh, within the tissue. So maybe in this issue, in this area, okay, the fluid will not be removed. Okay, so which might cause edema in a patient's this part, axillary region. Okay, so then but still it's okay. Like doctors, you might see that doctors usually tell these cancerous patients, just try to walk, increase your walking, so that the muscular pumps can kind of contract, and they increase the pumping action, and more fluid can be sent to the blood vessels, right? If it will increase the fluid movement in the lymphatic vessels and maybe reduce the edema, right? Or sometimes doctors give them the compression bands, they put a band over here, right? As a result, the fluid is sent to the lymphatic vessels, right? Which might reduce their swelling in this area. Okay, so that was about the lymph nodes. And now we move on to the other types of the lymphoid organs. Okay, so we're going to discuss about the primary and the secondary lymphoid organs. Okay, so as I told you that we don't have only lymph, we also have lymphoid tissues like phagocytic cells, T cells, B cells, spleen, thymus, lymph nodes, right? Tonsils, Peyer's patches, these are all considered, as we don't have only lymphatic vessels. Lymphatic system also is made up of the lymphatic tissues and the lymphatic organs. Let's discuss that part now. Okay, so before that, you need to know, for example, what are primary and the secondary lymphoid organs, even though we'll discuss this later on again. Okay, so lymphoid organs are categorized into two parts. We have a primary lymphoid organ, and then we have a secondary lymphoid organ. So what are primary lymphoid organs? Primary lymphoid organs are, for example, those organs where your T cells and B cells, T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes, they originate or they mature. What does that mean? B cells and T cells, they are all formed by the hemocytoblasts. If you remember blood chapter, okay, they all originate in the bone marrow. So bone marrow is a primary lymphoid organ, right? Then what happens? B cells stay here in the bone marrow for the maturation, but T cells, if you remember, I told you they move to the thymus for the maturation, right? We discussed that in chapter number 9. So T cells move to the thymus for maturation. So even thymus is also your primary lymphoid organ. So we have only two primary lymphoid organs. One is the bone marrow, another is the thymus. Rest, all of them are considered as the secondary lymphoid organs, whether it's a lymph node, whether it's a spleen, whether we talk about MALT, right? Mucosa associated lymphoid tissue, wherein we'll talk about that in a while, right? So tonsils, Peyer's patches, right? So they all are considered as the secondary lymphoid organs, because after leaving thymus, after leaving bone marrow, you'll see that these cells will migrate in the in the secondary lymphoid organs, be it a spleen, be it a thymus, be it tonsil, be it a lymph node. Just now we saw that T cells and B cells are also present in the lymph nodes, because when they leave primary lymphoid organs, okay, in order to fight with the bacteria and the viruses, okay, they keep on circulating in the secondary lymphoid organs. Did we all understand all this? Is it clear what is the difference between the two? So look at this. This is the tonsils, okay? Then we have thymus in the mediastinum. This is spleen, which is also a secondary lymphoid organ. We have Peyer's patches, okay, which are present within the small intestines, protecting our gut from the microorganisms. Okay, we also have, the appendix, the lymphoid follicles. So all of them protecting our gut against the various microorganisms. Okay, now let's discuss all of them one by one. We start with the spleen. How many of you know the function of the spleen? Maybe you've heard before. Yes? Recycle the blood. Okay. Reserve the blood. Very good. Reserve the blood as well as the platelets. Right? Okay, spleen, this is the area where spleen is present. It's curving around the stomach, right? So spleen is made up of two types of tissues: immunity and fighting the bacteria. Take the damaged blood. Not the damaged blood, the damaged RBCs. You're right, absolutely, Gaida. Dareen. Yes, it's a secondary lymphoid organ, right? So but when we say spleen, first of all, you have to understand that spleen is made up of two types of tissues: the white pulp and the red pulp. And the white pulp has its own function, which has mostly immune related functions, and the red pulp has a blood related functions. Okay. So, first of all, when we say that the spleen can filter, clean the blood, right, of the bacteria, viruses, and the debris, right? So, this is a very important job done by the spleen. Okay, cleaning the blood, filtering the blood. Okay, it does not produce, I don't know why this point is, it does not produce lymphocytes, because the lymphocytes are present in the in the spleen, because it's a secondary lymphoid organ. They migrate to the to the spleen. Okay, so in the spleen, you will see that we'll talk about later on how lymphocytes are proliferated, how they become immunocompetent, how they are taught how to kill the microorganisms, right? So immunocompetent, right? Immunocompetence, your further maturation, or or basically, fighting with the bacteria, right? All those things will take place in the white pulp in the spleen. Okay, and also whatever we have age old RBCs, destroyed RBCs, okay, and they all are processed in the spleen. And when we are in mother's womb as a fetus, right, the blood cells are not formed in the bone marrow, they're formed in the, some of them are formed there as well. So it's the most hematopoietic organ, okay, in the fetus. And it also acts as a blood reservoir. What does that mean? That means, God forbid, if a person meets with an meets with an accident, okay, so what's going to happen? Some amount of blood is going to be squeezed from the spleen and sent to the body. And they also store lot of platelets, right? Lot of platelets. So that is why spleen is considered as the largest lymphoid organ is the spleen. Okay, and if, God forbid, there's an infection in the body, you'll see that the spleen will increase in size, okay, because of lot of lymphocytes present in the in the spleen. They all divide and mature and fight during infection, so it might increase in size during infection, but later on, once the infection subsides, okay, it decreases back again. Okay. And there are a lot of macrophages also present in the spleen, okay, which can destroy the blood-borne pathogens. Okay, so that was about the spleen. Then thymus. Okay, thymus, we already spoke about thymus last time, is that thymus is a bilobed gland present in the mediastinum. Look at this, right? It produces the hormone called as thymosin. Okay, so this is the only organ where you don't find a lot of reticular fibers. It is mostly made up of epithelial tissue. Okay, and this gland is very active when we are young, but towards the age this gland is kind of becomes it, it's just it's just a form of a tissue then there, right? It does not have a very good immune response at that time. Okay, and what is the thymus? Thymus is a site for the maturation of the T cells. When T cells are formed in the bone marrow, they travel from the bone marrow into the thymus for the maturation. Okay, so thymus is a primary lymphoid organ. Remember this. It's not a secondary lymphoid organ. Okay, it's a primary lymphoid organ. So produce the hormone thymosin. Okay, and in the thymus, we'll discuss this whole process, right? The T cells are taught how to differentiate between the self antigens and the non-self antigens. Which antigen belongs to you, and which antigen is a foreign body to for which they have to start the response. Then we have the tonsils, right? Tonsils, we have the palatine tonsils, we have the lingual tonsils, and we have the pharyngeal tonsils. As you see here, the tonsils over here, the pharyngeal tonsils, see, they are not usually white in color, but I've just brought the picture here to show you if they're infected, right? Then this is a white colored pus which you see here. They're inflamed. That shows that they have basically engulfed the bacteria, right? So it's a lymphatic tissue, okay? The tonsils are basically lymphatic tissue, which is very rich in nodules. Okay, and it also increases in size whenever there is an infection in the tonsils. Okay, and they basically guard our respiratory system. They trap and remove the bacteria which try to enter through our throat. Okay, that was about uh, the tonsils. Okay, and then we have the Peyer's patch and the lymphoid follicles. So Peyer's patch and lymphoid follicles, right? Both of them protect our gut, okay, from various microorganisms, because we eat food. Food can be rich of bacteria and other things, right? So we also need immunity in the gut. So that's provided by the Peyer's patch and the lymphoid follicles found in the appendix. So long back, if you remember, we used to call appendix as, as a vestigial organ, the organ which has no function at all, right? Even if you remove it, there's no problem, right? But now a lot of, interest is into the appendix, because we have found that there are a lot of lymphoid follicles present in the appendix, which can be a source of what? A very good immune cells protecting our gut. They all are rich in the macrophages. Okay, that was about the Peyer's patch and the lymphoid follicles. Then MALT. What is MALT? Mucosa associated lymphoid tissue. So whether it's a Peyer's patch, or whether it's a lymphoid follicle in the appendix, or whether we talk about tonsils. So all these three organs together, they're called as MALT, because they not only protect our respiratory system, but they also protect our gut. Okay, so together they're all called as a mucosa associated, because we have a mucous membrane not only in the respiratory system, we also have the mucous membrane in the digestive system as well. Before we start with the next part of the chapter, so quick review: what is the function of lymphatic system, guys? Who will answer this question? Back the fluid to the blood. Yes, fluid as well as the proteins. If proteins have been lost from the blood, they also send the proteins back to the blood. If they're, as I said, that usually proteins are not lost, they stay in the blood. Very good. Restores lost blood. No, it's not lost blood, guys. It's the lost fluid, because blood never leaves the blood vessels. It's only the plasma, only the fluid which leaves. How can your RBCs cross the capillary wall? Capillary wall is so thin. The RBCs cannot cross, albumins cannot cross, right? So don't use the word blood, use the word fluid. Defense, absolutely, protects against foreign particles, right? Yes. Okay, no. Okay. Yes, absolutely. All of you are correct. But the only thing which we did not discuss is that, they also help in absorbing the fats. This is not mentioned in your book, but why I brought it here? Because we spoke about chylomicrons in biochemistry, right? So chylomicrons, if you remember, we spoke about that, right? So the chylomicrons, when you're your lipid particles, your digestive lipid particles, right, they are also absorbed through the lymphatic vessels. Okay, those chylomicrons, right, they enter through the lymphatic vessels because lymphatic vessels are more permeable than the blood capillaries. And then finally, when they're into the lymph, then from the lymph those lipid particles are finally given to the blood as the lymph enters into the blood. So we call those specialized lymphatic vessels as lacteals. You don't need to know, it's not there in the book, but I'm just kind of relating it to the biochemistry. Okay. So those specialized lymphatic vessels are called as lacteals, which are surrounding your intestines, right? They are, why they're called as lacteals? Because they become white in color because of the absorption of the dietary lipid, okay, the chylomicrons. Okay. So other than that, we also spoke about that they take the fluid back, they take the proteins back if they're present, and they protect us against the foreign material. Very good. What is the difference between the blood capillary and the lymphatic capillary, guys? More permeable. Which one is more permeable? Lymphatic vessels are more permeable, absolutely right. And the lymphatic vessels are blunt ended, dead ended, while as blood capillaries are not dead ended. They're one side they're connected to the arterioles and the other side to the venules, right? One way system, right? Very good. Blood vessels are not, one way system, right? Pumpless. Yes, absolutely, very good, Gada. Function of the lymph node is to filter the lymph. We just spoke about it. Okay. Now this is the second part of chapter. Okay. Till now it was all about lymphatic vessels and lymph and all. But now the second part of the chapter deals with the body defenses. Okay. How your lymphatic system, how your immune system gives you protection against the foreign particles, foreign bacteria, foreign viruses. Okay. So before we start this, we need to know certain definitions. We need to know what is immunity. Okay. We know that immunity is basically specific resistance to the disease. Okay. And that all resistance comes because we have two types of defense system in our body. One called as a non-specific defense system, or we also call it as an innate system. And the second one is a specific or the adaptive defense system. Both the systems work hand on hand together. They are not separate. Remember that. For our sake, to make our life easy, we have separated them. But both of them are interdependent on each other. They work hand in hand so that whatever microorganisms have entered in our body, they will be there to kill or remove the microorganisms from our body, right? And nowadays, we all are doing so many things to increase the immunity, to make our immune system more and more strong, right? And how we can make your immune system strong? The first and foremost thing is a good diet, a healthy diet, not a junk food, right? So healthy diet can increase your immunity. Lot of sleep, like minimum 8 to 10 hours of sleep. 8 hours of sleep is good to boost your immunity, right? Other than that, everybody, you will see nowadays, like vitamin C, everybody's eating vitamin C, zinc, and everything, right? All these things, make your immune cells strong. But the most important ones are no stress, good food, and good amount of rest, sleep, like minimum 8 hours, right? All these things are very, very important to boost the immunity, right? To make your immune system very, very strong. Let's try to learn the difference between the innate defense and the adaptive defense system. Okay. Innate is also called as non-specific. I'll tell you why it's called as a non-specific, right? So innate means that, for example, if you see here, I have made a table, okay, for all of you. So why I made this table, because I know that the whole chapter is based on this table, okay. The whole chapter, in this whole chapter, we're going to talk about just the immune cells. You will see that we're going to talk about various types of immune cells. But students usually get confused if I ask them, okay, what kind of cells are B cells? So they don't know how to categorize. Okay, B cells come under humoral immunity, and humoral immunity comes under adaptive defense system, right? Or if they ask them about the natural killer cells, right, what kind of defense system is it? Oh, they don't know whether it's a first line or a second line, right? So that's why I made this table, okay, so that it becomes pretty much easier for everyone, okay, to know where what kind of cells come under, right? So the whole chapter now is based on this table, like, okay, and I'm going to come back to this table again and again, okay. Thank you, dear, no problem. Thank you. So first of all, let's try to know the difference between innate immune response and the adaptive immune response. When I say innate, I told you that it's also called as a non-specific immune response. And I'll tell you why it's called as non-specific. Innate because it responds very, very immediately, within few minutes to protect you, right? What does that mean? That means I switched on my AC. AC was full of dust. The dust particles went into my nose. Within 3 minutes, 1 minute, I started sneezing because my innate immune response basically released a lot of histamines, right, which belong to the non-specific immunity or innate immunity, right? So that is why it's a very fast. This one is slow, okay, and this one is very, very fast. It responds immediately. It takes a lot of time to respond, okay. Now the difference number two, okay, the function of the innate is basically, okay, it tries to stop the infection, pretty much before it crosses our basic, body defenses, basic body barriers like your skin, mucous membrane, right? So it does not want this to get activated, right? So it basically stops all the microorganisms before they finally enter into our blood and all, right? So that is its main aim, okay? And while doing so, why is it called non-specific? Because it does not start a response to a particular bacteria or a particular virus, okay? It's more generalized. It's more generalized. While as you will see that when we discuss the adaptive response, it knows that, okay, this is the bacteria, this is the coronavirus. I need to basically produce a response against this, this particular coronavirus, right? And this adaptive, that's why it's called a specific one. That's why the word specific for this, okay? And in the adaptive one, you will see that, it the way it fights the infection is totally different than the innate one, okay. You can compare it like, adaptive one is like, a policeman, a shruta who is very skilled, who has all the good gadgets to kill the thief, the top class fighting people, are your adaptive defenses, right? Because they have high tech weapons, they have high tech guns, okay, and they know which person we need to kill. They attack one person, one particular person, one particular foreign substance. So that is why the word specific for the adaptive one. Whereas here, they don't have very high tech weapons, right? But what is important is that they respond quickly, they're always prepared. This one needs time to get activated. The adaptive one takes longer time to get activated. By the time my body showed the response, right, my, with the coronavirus, I was already infected deep down, my lungs were already infected. So T cells and B cells take longer time to respond. right? But this one is very much ready. So the first thing when I started the infection, the first thing which I got was a fever, a very high fever. So that is a non-specific response, because fever is a non-specific body response, and we'll discuss all that in detail. Why do we get fever? Okay. So under the innate response, so did you all understand the difference between the two, guys? Is it clear? Okay, good. So under the in today's rest of the time, whatever time is left out, we're going to discuss only this part. Okay, this will be in tomorrow's class in detail, right? So what is the first line of defense mechanism? Okay, first line of defense mechanism is like a physical barrier. Okay, so whether, as I said, that as whether it's a skin. Okay, if you remember, we spoke about skin. If you remember, I don't know whether you remember the chapter 4 or not. We learned in skin that we have the topmost layer, stratum corneum, if you remember that. Stratum corneum is so rich in keratin, isn't it? It's keratinized, isn't it? The topmost layer of our skin, right? It's hardened, it's keratinized. And that keratin layer is so very important because it will not allow water to go out, but at the same time, it will not allow any bacteria to come into our skin. Okay, so skin is the first line of defense mechanism, right, which first of all protects our body. If there's a break in the skin, khalas, your first line of defense has failed, your physical barrier has failed, right? So external body membrane, whether it's a skin or whether it is a mucous membrane, right, they all come under the skin, and mucus will come under the first line of defense mechanism, right? And if you remember, again in chapter number 4, we spoke about acid mantle. Okay, what is an acid mantle? Does anyone remember what is an acid mantle? And it's produced by, we discussed that in chapter 4 last semester. Nobody remembers what is acid mantle? Mantle. We called it a mantle there, or maybe acidic mantle. Nobody? Only sweat? Lian, you're right, but only sweat? Okay. Sebaceous glands, sebum. Only sebum? No. Basically, what happens, if you remember chapter 4, we spoke about that. Your sebaceous glands, they produce sebum, right? The oil produced by the sebaceous glands, right? And if you remember, we also spoke about the sweat glands, the dorophic glands. We remember apocrine and the acrine glands. If you remember, we spoke about acrine glands. They produce the sweat. So sweat produced by the acrine glands, and the sebum produced by our oil glands, right? The sebaceous glands, right? Together, these two form a layer on our skin, which is called, I explained that in the skin chapter as well. We call it acid mantle. Why acid mantle? If you remember in chapter number 4, we spoke about sweat is a fluid, it's a watery fluid which is produced by the sweat glands. And if you remember, we said that its pH is somewhat acidic, not very acidic, slightly acidic, like 4 to 6 is the pH of the sweat. So it's slightly acidic. So sweat being acidic, right? Environment, okay? So it creates the acidic mantle on our skin, which does not allow bacteria to divide on our skin. It's called an acid mantle. It acts as a barrier to the viruses, to the bacteria, right? To any contamination like dust particles, for example, right? So mixture of sweat and sebum together is called as the acidic mantle, which is very, very important, right? And it also, if you remember in skin chapter, we said that your sweat also contains a chemical called as a dermicidin. Do you remember? Dermicidin. Your skin also contains dermicidin, and dermicidin is a chemical which has a capability to kill the bacteria. Okay, that's called as an, so that is the first line of defense mechanism. And the keratin, we already spoke about the keratin present in our stratum corneum, right? And then, okay, what are the other things in the first line of defense mechanism? Skin and mucous membrane is like, definitely they are like the first line. But the other things also, let's say the bacteria cannot cross the skin. But what if I ate a food which was, God forbid, rich in bacteria? What will happen? The food will reach to, and what if the mucous membrane was not able to protect it? But then I don't need to worry. I still have my first line of defense, that is the hydrochloric acid produced by my stomach, which will try to kill the microorganism. Or the protein digesting enzymes in my stomach, they will also try to kill the microorganism. Okay. And then when we eat the food, saliva or tears in the eyes, lacrimal fluid, they also contain something called the lysozyme, okay, which can kill the microorganism, which can destroy the microorganism. And mucus, we already spoke about last semester, that mucus, whether it is present in the digestive tract or in the respiratory tract, right? It's a thick fluid which helps in trapping the microorganisms, right? And if once these microorganisms are trapped, right, we spoke about the ciliated cells, the cilia on the epithelial cells, right? The hair-like projections on the epithelial cells, right? Then what will happen? The cilia will try to, bring all that, which, the mucus, which is rich in bacteria, and it will not allow it to go to the lungs and try to either send it to digestive system or throw it out of the body from the mouth. Okay, and then the nasal hairs, if I inhale the dust particles, my nasal hairs are there, they will try to trap the microorganisms. Okay, so and the vagina, right? Through the vagina, there is a chance that microorganisms can enter into it. We also have an acid mantle in the vagina. Again, its secretions are very acidic. So because of those acidic secretions, it inhibits the growth of the bacteria and the fungi in the female reproductive tract. Okay, so all these things come under the physical barriers, or you can say the first line of defense mechanism. So whether we spoke about skin, whether it was the mucous membrane, whether it was the hydrochloric acid in the stomach, whether it was the saliva or the lacrimal fluid, okay, or whether it was the cilia in the mucous membrane, okay, or whether it was just the mucous membrane, all these things are considered as the first line of defense mechanisms. Are we all okay about it? Any question till now about the first line of defense mechanism? Dr. Tears is intact mucous membrane. In the tears, as I said, that we have the lacrimal fluid in the tears. Okay, so more than that, we have the lacrimal fluid in the tears. Okay, and those lacrimal fluid, if you remember, I told you that they contain the lysozymes, right? And that lysozyme has the capability to destroy the bacterial cell wall, to destroy the enzymes of the bacteria. Lysozyme, right? It is a protein digesting enzyme, okay, which can digest the cell wall protein of the bacteria and thus helps in destroying the bacteria. The same lysozyme is present in our tears and it is also present in our saliva. Okay, so before the microorganism can reach to our stomach, right, the lysozyme, the protein digesting enzyme, can also kill the bacteria in our mouth. Other than that, we also have the mucous membrane. Is it clear to everyone? Should we stop here? We can start the second line of defense. I finished it with the other sections. Okay, for you, we have a class tomorrow. We can finish it, in the tomorrow's class. But let me tell you, what is like, where you need to stop. Okay, let me tell you that. Okay, so